down to what is the purpose of education, which is something that Charlotte Mason talks a lot about, right? And I think we can focus on I am educating my kids so that they will be able to get into college and get a good job and not live in my basement forever. Or am I educating my children to shape and mold the character and the kind of person that they're going to become? And Charlotte Mason, I believe, is the latter of those, right? And so the academic achievement comes along with that, and her methods are very vigorous, but it's on educating the whole entire person. So for me, it's been I'm not educating my children so that they get a great score on their SAT and they get into college. And I'm educating my children so that they'll grow up to be self learners, so that they'll be able to be kind people, so that they'll be able to have a wide feast, like she talks about, be magnanimous, that they'll have, yeah, you can have both. That's the point, right? That this kind of education is very, it is very in depth. I mean, you want to look at some of the books that they read in high school. I didn't read those kind of books in college, so they're very meaty, and it does prepare them for that. But like, it's not what is your end goal, right? And I think that's something to think about as well. I'm not trying to teach them to pass a test. I'm trying to teach them to become these kind of people, and these kind of people who are self learners, these kind of people who think for themselves, these people who are able to, you know, do the work of a Charlotte Mason education, which is a lot on a child. Reading these books and narrating them, they're having to carry that weight of their own education, as opposed to like a public school education where the teacher's just pouring information into them and then they regurgitate it on a multiple choice test. It's much harder to have a Charlotte Mason education. But in terms of like statistics, no, I mean, I don't know of any studies that have been done. But Charlotte Mason, I mean, this is from the 1800s and it was global. So throughout all of the British Empire, people were using her methods and they were her schools. And then even in America in the past 20 years, there's been tons of students who have been homeschooled using this method. So there's a lot of people who have done it. It's not like some newfangled thing. And when I was a public school teacher, I mean, it seemed like every 5 years they were like, we got this new philosophy of education and we're going to completely change the way we teach math. And you got to learn this whole new way. And it's like whiplash, you know, and it's like, have these actually been proven to work with children? You know, they would just like throw this stuff on us. Whereas like this has been over hundred of so years that Charlotte Mason and her philosophy is in. But she said she bases her principles off of the way that students have been learning, you know, since biblical times. Like, so it's not like she came up with something out of nowhere either. It was based on the observation of students and her study, which is very, very in depth. But another thing too is Google came out with a study, and I'll see if I can find it and link it. If you go on my Pinterest page, I have a Pinterest board. I'll try to link it in the replay, but it's called Charlotte Mason is Right. And so anytime I find like a research article that supports some of her thinking and findings, I link it on there. But anyway, Google did this study of their top employees and looked at what skills that they had. And they, you know, the assumption was that the top employees at Google would have amazing technical skills. They would be very kind of left brain people. And it turns out that the best employees at Google were the ones who had empathy, were able to communicate with other people, were able to think outside the box, were self-learners. And those are all things that come from a Charlotte Mason education. And not just, you know, can you code, um, which is a great skill, right? Or pass calculus, but, you know, empathy you get from reading these amazing literature where you're putting yourself in the shoes of someone who's gone through something really hard. I mean, my kids all the time when we're reading are like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how it would be to live back then. You know, being able to think outside of the box. Well, Charlotte Mason education teaches a child to have to do a lot of the thinking for themselves because they're not passive learners and receiving that, right? Communication, oh my gosh, yes. I'm narrating several times a day and telling you what I'm learning. I know how to be an effective communicator, which is a skill you're going to need no matter what job you have these days, right? Um, so it really does prepare them for a life. And I've seen that in my own kids. I have two kids at, well, one's a sophomore now at the University of South Carolina, and then one's a senior, and she's going there in the fall. But she's taking college classes now at our tech school as a dual enrollment student. And, you know, they tell me that all the time. that their peers, they don't know how to think for themselves. They want the teacher to tell them like what the answer is going to be. They can't have a discussion about stuff. They just haven't learned how to do that. Um, they're not good public speakers. And my kids are like, I've been talking in front of grown-ups like my whole life. So anyway, I just encourage you to kind of think through that a little bit more. I hope that was helpful.